Imagine discovering through an Instagram photo that your entire family was invited to your cousin's bridal shower, except you. Now imagine discovering that this wasn't an oversight, but a deliberate decision discussed between your mother, your aunt, and all your close relatives. That's exactly what happened to me one spring morning that would completely change my perception of family, loyalty, and the price we pay to belong. This is the story of how I lost family, but found something far more valuable. The sound of porcelain shattering against the kitchen floor echoed through the empty apartment, but I barely registered the sound. My eyes remained fixed on my phone screen, my thumb frozen over a sequence of photos that shouldn't have existed. Or rather, photos from an event I shouldn't have discovered just like that. There was my cousin Sophia, radiant in a pastel pink dress, surrounded by familiar faces I'd known since childhood. My Aunt Helena holding a glass of champagne. My mother laughing at something someone said. Distant cousins I'd only seen at Christmas. Even Dona Marta, who needed a walker to get around, was present. I methodically counted each person in the photos, as if the number might change if I double-checked. 36 guests. 36 people who considered Sophia important enough to reserve a Saturday afternoon for. 36 people who were remembered, contacted, and included. The bridal shower had taken place the previous weekend in the garden of Aunt Helena's house, with tables decorated in shades of peach and gold, Sophia's favorite colors, fresh flower arrangements, and a dessert table that looked like something out of a magazine. The realization hit me like a punch in the gut. This wasn't an oversight. Events of this magnitude are planned weeks in advance. Lists are made, reviewed, and confirmed. Invitations are sent. My absence was a conscious choice. Just a month earlier, I had sent Sophia a personalized card I designed especially for her, congratulating her on her engagement. I included dried flowers from my garden and even offered my services as a graphic designer to create all the wedding stationery, invitations, programs, signs, whatever she needed. It would be my gift, I said. From one cousin to another. The apartment that had always seemed cozy now felt suffocating. The morning light streaming through the windows, which had warmed me minutes before, now seemed to expose every corner, making everything raw and evident. It was then that the truth crystallized. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been deliberately erased. I sat on the kitchen stool, ignoring the broken porcelain scattered across the floor, as memories of last Christmas flooded my mind. Aunt Helena presiding over the dinner table, toasting Sophia's success at the bank where she worked, a manager at 28, she announced to everyone, pride brimming with every word. Then her gaze shifted to me, her smile visibly fading. "Luna's still doing that drawing thing, making logos and computer stuff," she said, her words dripping with condescension. "That little thing that allowed me to buy my own apartment. That little thing that landed me contracts with 3 nationally recognized brands." But when I tried to mention the 120,000 reais down payment I'd saved over 6 years, the conversation quickly shifted to Sophia's engagement ring and her honeymoon plans in Europe. My parents remained silent throughout dinner, nodding silently as they dwarfed me in front of them. It was always like this. Sophia took center stage while I was pushed into the shadows, and everyone seemed comfortable with this arrangement. I picked up the phone with hands that no longer shook and dialed my mother's number. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with that performative concern she mastered so well.
"Luna?
Is everything okay?" Her voice already carried that tone of someone expecting drama, as if any call from me was automatically an exaggeration. "There was a bridal shower for Sophia last weekend," I said, keeping my voice as steady as a straight line. "Everyone was there. Why wasn't I invited?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm opening. Then came the sigh, long, theatrical, rehearsed.
"Oh, that."
Helena thought it was better this way. "You know how you are, Luna. Always needing to be the center of attention." Sophia deserved to have a day to herself, without competition. The words hit me like ice water. Competition? When had I ever competed with Sophia? When had I ever made any family vent about me? I was always the one who sat quietly in the corner, the one who listened, the one who applauded others' achievements while mine were ignored or diminished. "This isn't fair," I managed to say, my voice finally revealing a fraction of what I felt. Don't start, Luna. Please. This is exactly the kind of reaction we wanted to avoid. Your cousin deserves to be celebrated without all this drama you're creating. Drama. The word hung in the air like toxic smoke. I became the drama simply by existing, by questioning, by hoping to be included. The injustice was so absurd, I almost laughed. I'll call Aunt Helena, I said.
Luna, no.
But I had already hung up. I found Helena's number and dialed, a strange calm washing over me. When she answered, her voice was clipped as always, impatient as if every second spent with me was wasted time. Why wasn't I invited to Sophia's bridal shower? I asked bluntly. I was wondering when you'd call, she replied, without even feigning surprise or remorse. We thought it best if you weren't there. Sophia deserves to shine without having to share the spotlight. Sharing attention? The sentence was so absurd that I needed a moment to process it. As if my mere presence could somehow diminish Sophia's brilliance. As if I were a threat to her protagonism simply by breathing the same air. I'm her cousin. Her only direct cousin, I said, the words coming out mechanically, as if the biological fact could change anything.
Listen carefully, Luna.
Helena's voice hardened even further. We've all talked about this, your mother, your father, your aunt, and uncle, we all agree. Wedding plans are also already being discussed. I suggest you don't make this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Some relationships in this family are already delicate. The threat wasn't subtle at all. It was a clear warning. Accept your exclusion silently or lose what little family connection you have left. I stood in my kitchen, looking out the window at the city below, and suddenly understood with crystal clarity. My family has always valued appearances more than genuine connections. It's always been this way. I just refused to see it. I hung up without saying goodbye. The silence in the apartment was no longer oppressive, but enlightening. A bird landed on the balcony railing, its black feathers gleaming in the morning sun. It watched me for a moment before taking flight, and I found myself wondering what it would be like to be that free, without the invisible constraints of family expectations. The next day, I was reviewing design proposals for a new client when my phone vibrated. A group message from Aunt Helena. Remember to bring the floral arrangements for Sophia's wedding on Saturday. Good thing we didn't invite Luna, less drama.
My heart sank.
I read it again, certain I'd misunderstood. The message was deleted seconds later, that little message deleted, appearing on the screen, but not before I captured the evidence. The group included Sophia, Helena, and my mother. My own mother, actively conspiring in my exclusion. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house in the suburbs, the screenshot burning in my pocket like evidence of a crime. My mother answered the door in gardening clothes, dirt smeared on her right cheek.
Luna?
What a surprise. I was going to make tea. I followed her into the living room, where she settled into her favorite armchair with the familiarity of someone who had never questioned her place in the world. I remained standing, suddenly aware of the power dynamics that had always existed between us. The family photos on the console stared back at me, Sophia taking center stage in most of them, my face always partially obscured or captured in some unflattering moment. I got an interesting message yesterday. I began, pulling out my phone. Sent by mistake, apparently. Her face changed when I showed her the screenshot. Not surprise, but resignation, as if she knew this moment would come eventually. We all agreed it would be easier this way, she said, smoothing invisible wrinkles in her pants. Sophia deserves a beautiful wedding without complications. The word hit me like a slap. Complications. That's what I had become. Not a daughter, not a niece, not a cousin. A complication to be managed, a problem to be avoided. Are you telling me I'm a complication? My voice was firm, despite the tremor I felt inside. Now, Luna, don't be dramatic. She sighed in that tone she reserved for when I was being, in her opinion, difficult. Maybe you should make other plans for the May weekend. Other plans? I repeated, disbelief seeping through every syllable. While my cousin is getting married at the Palacio dos Cedros. That 80,000 real wedding where every distant relative I barely know is invited, except me? Her eyebrows rose slightly. How do you know about the place? Raquel called me last week asking if we could share transportation to the wedding. A small sense of satisfaction blossomed when I saw her cringe. She assumed I'd be there. The silence stretched between us like a minefield. She played with a loose thread on her sleeve, avoiding my gaze. Your father, and I think it's best this way, she finally said. The whole family agrees. The whole family was told what to think of me, weren't they? My voice was barely above a whisper. What exactly did you tell them about me? She looked out the window, focusing on something in the garden that seemed more important than the conversation. Except you were always sensitive about Sophia getting attention. The betrayal was a physical weight on my chest. Years of holidays where I sat silently while Sophia was showered with praise. Years of watching my achievements belittled while hers were celebrated with elaborate toasts. And now they were rewriting history to paint me as the envious villain. You're erasing me from the family narrative, I said, understanding crystallizing as I spoke. Everyone already believes I'm difficult because that's what you've told them. That's not true, she protested, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Yes, it's true. And now I have a choice: accept being excluded or risk losing the little connection we still have. My mother stood, walking to the window with her back to me. I hope you make the right decision, Luna. Your father and I have been helping with the taxes on your apartment. If you make trouble about this marriage... The threat hung in the air, unspoken but perfectly clear. Conditional behavior, conditional love, conditional support. Everything in my family life had a price, and the price was my silence, my acquiescence, my willingness to disappear on command. I left without saying goodbye, driving aimlessly for hours around the city. 3 client deadlines passed while I sat paralyzed in my apartment, unable to focus on simple design tasks. 3 days of potential revenue evaporated as I stared at my phone, waiting for someone, anyone, in my family to tell me it had all been a terrible misunderstanding. Nobody called. It was Laura who showed up on the 3rd day, carrying Thai food and a bottle of wine. She listened to me recount every detail, without interrupting, without minimizing my pain, without suggesting I was exaggerating. This is classic emotional manipulation, she said, refilling my glass. They're gaslighting you, making you believe you're the problem when they're the ones excluding you. Her validation was like water after days in the desert. For the first time since seeing those photos, I didn't feel crazy. Helena and her mother are working together to control the narrative, Laura continued. It's toxic family dynamics at their worst. Later, alone on my balcony, I watched the city lights flicker on as darkness fell. The same black-feathered bird returned, perching briefly on the railing before flying away again. Sitting there, sipping warmed wine, I wondered if I should show up at the wedding anyway and force a confrontation, or walk away completely and build something new elsewhere. The family I'd known my whole life was slipping through my fingers, but was it worth fighting for relationships that caused so much pain? Sophia's engagement photos appeared on my Instagram feed on a Tuesday at exactly 8:30 a.m. I was halfway through my first coffee when the image filled my screen. Sophia resplendent against a backdrop of golden autumn leaves, her fiancé gazing at her with studied adoration. The caption cut deeper than any blade, celebrating our journey with those who truly support us, keeping our wedding intimate with only the people who have always been there. My phone immediately started vibrating. 3 messages in a row from distant cousins I'd barely seen in years. Why are you causing drama during Sophia's special moment? A family should support each other regardless of differences. Aunt Helena is so upset with your behavior. I placed the phone face down on the counter, my hand shaking slightly. The accusations didn't make sense until I realized what was happening. They were rewriting history, creating a narrative that I'd declined an invitation instead of admitting I'd been deliberately excluded. My grandmother's phone rang that night while she was washing the dishes, her fragile voice thick with disappointment. Luna, darling, I never thought you'd refuse to support your cousin's special day. The plate almost slipped out of my hands. Grandma, I wasn't invited. That's not what Helena told me. The certainty in her voice was absolute. She said you couldn't put your jealousy aside, not even for a day. After we hung up, I stood motionless at the kitchen sink, water running over my hands until they cooled completely. The story about me was taking shape without my input, and according to their version, I was the bitter, envious relative who couldn't celebrate Sophia's happiness. The following week, Brennan Enterprises canceled our contract for their summer campaign. The email was polite but definitive. "We've heard you can be difficult to work with. We need someone who fits into our collaborative culture." 3 days later, Morrison Retail withdrew from our preliminary discussions. The loss of both projects represented 22,000 raise of my expected quarterly profit. I methodically traced the connections. Brennan's marketing director played golf with my uncle. The owner of Morrison attended the same church as Aunt Helena. Sleep became a distant memory. I spent my nights hunched over my computer, redesigning my portfolio website instead of resting. Every pixel tweak, every color change felt like a small way to regain control over my narrative. At 3 a.m, my eyes burning from the glare of the screen, I wondered how many hours of work it would take to overcome the whispers my family was spreading. My once comfortable routine began to unravel. I stopped going to Café Dorado, even though they made the best cappuccino in the area, because Helena's Bridge Club met there on Thursday mornings. I started driving an extra 20 minutes to shop at a different market after seeing a friend of my mother's browsing the produce aisle of my usual market. Checking social media became a form of self-harm. Each notification provoked a physical response, a racing pulse, shallow breathing, cold hands. I began documenting every family interaction in a leather-bound notebook, recording dates, exact words, and witnesses present. The evidence seemed important, even though I didn't know for whom I was collecting it. The anonymous message arrived on a Sunday morning. "Some people are not stable enough to attend formal events. Your absence is a kindness to everyone." I recognized the phrasing immediately. Helena's particular brand of cruelty wrapped in false concern. The phone slipped from my fingers onto the sofa as something inside me finally broke. Not violently, but with a resigned stillness, like the last autumn leaf falling from a branch. The doorbell rang at exactly that moment, as if the universe had a perverse sense of timing. I considered ignoring it until I heard Lara's voice through the door. "I know you're there, Luna. I brought Thai food and wedding magazines." I opened the door, and there she was, holding a paper bag from Bangkok Express and a stack of colorful magazines. Her camera bag slung over her shoulder as usual. "What are you doing here?" My voice sounded hollow, even to myself. Lara walked past me into the apartment. "Let's plan something truly worth celebrating. Something about genuine joy, not empty appearances." I was about to ask what she meant when my mother's silver sedan parked right in front of the building, visible from my window. My stomach tightened. "I have a client call in 5 minutes," I lied, reaching for my laptop. Lara squeezed my shoulder before retreating to the kitchen with our food. My mother entered without waiting for an invitation, her eyes critically surveying my space, as if searching for evidence of my supposed instability. "We need to talk, Luna." She sat stiffly on the sofa, her bag balanced on her knees. "This has gone too far." "What invitations?" I remained standing, suddenly aware of how physical position reflects power dynamics. "Sophia's wedding invitations." She smoothed a non-existent wrinkle in her pants. "You need to let this go. We won't reconsider." "This isn't about an invitation," I replied, and the clarity in my voice surprised me. "It's about years of being treated as if I were less important, less valuable, less worthy of consideration." My mother's face hardened like drying concrete. "If you can't support Sophia's happiness, maybe you're not the daughter I thought I raised." The words should have hurt, but instead they illuminated something I'd never seen so clearly before. I straightened my shoulders, regaining the full height I'd spent years unconsciously diminishing in the presence of my family. "I am exactly the daughter you raised," I told her, my voice rock steady. "I've just stopped accepting the role you assigned me." Something flickered across her face, perhaps surprise or even a flicker of respect, before she composed herself. But in that moment, I understood a fundamental truth that changed everything. My worth was never determined by family validation. Never has been. Later that evening, Laura and I sat on the porch, Thai food half-eaten between us. She scrolled through the calendar on her phone. I have a client photo shoot in Florianopolis in 3 weeks. Come with me. We'll turn it into a working vacation. I could use an assistant. The offer brought unexpected tears to my eyes. While my family made excuses for my exclusion, my friends were creating alternatives for my inclusion. My phone vibrated with a message from Diego. I just declined my invitation to Sophia's wedding. I'm not going anywhere where my friend isn't welcome. The next morning, I woke up and spoke confidently about my design business at a networking breakfast for the first time in months. 3 potential clients requested follow-up meetings. Something had shifted inside me, a calm certainty replacing the desperate need for approval. When Laura and I arrived in Florianopolis 3 weeks later, the ocean stretched out before us like pure possibility. In a small bookstore near the marina, I met Raphael, the owner with kind eyes and a quiet laugh, who asked thoughtful questions about my design work. "You should see my place at sunset," he said after our 3rd coffee together. I restored an old seaside villa north of here. The light is perfect for someone with your eye for design. Standing on her terrace that afternoon, watching the sun sink into the ocean, a thought formed with unexpected clarity. What if the answer wasn't fighting for inclusion in a celebration that didn't want me? What if I wrote a completely different story for myself? 2 months later, my phone rested on Raphael's kitchen counter, the screen displaying a half-finished invitation design. The morning light of the coastal village streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the space where 18 seats at the table would soon welcome the only people who truly matter in my life. What do you think of this font pairing? I pointed to the screen, where elegant lettering contrasted with clean, modern text. Too predictable? Raphael leaned forward, the aroma of his coffee mingling with a salty breeze coming through the open windows. "It looks like you, confident but not screaming for attention." I smiled, making a small adjustment to my spacing. For 3 weeks, every free moment had been dedicated to planning this gathering. Not a reaction to family drama, but a celebration reflecting on who I'd become. Every element, from the handmade botanical prints to the personalized playlists, showcased my professional talents while honoring genuine connections. May 15th, I said, tracing the date on the screen. Far enough away from Sophia's wedding that no one could claim I was being competitive. "Does it matter what they think?" Raphael asked, his voice gentle but challenging. "It's important that I know my intentions," I replied. I saved the file and closed the laptop. This isn't about them anymore. For the first time since I found those bridal shower photos, enthusiasm bubbled without the bitter taste of rejection. I was creating instead of reacting, building something authentic instead of fighting for space where I wasn't wanted. My phone rang, Aunt Helena's name flashing on the screen. I considered letting it go to voicemail, then decided against it. I was tired of hiding. "Hello?" My voice was firm, professional.
Luna.
Her voice could freeze boiling water. "What's this I hear about you planning some trip during the family wedding season? You need to remove those social media posts immediately." I frowned, confusion momentarily replacing caution. "What posts?" "Lara's photography page. The save-the-date announcement for her event."
In Assizet Villa?
On May 15th? My stomach sank. May 15th? But Sophia's wedding isn't until June. The silence stretched between us like cracking ice. When Helena spoke again, her voice dripped with false sweetness. "Oh, you didn't know? The date was changed weeks ago. May 15th at the Imperial Hotel. Everyone was informed. Everyone except me." The realization hit like a rock. "So you're having your little party on the same day as Sophia's wedding?" The accusation hung in the air like poisonous smoke. "The family will need to choose sides, Luna. Think about what you're doing." My first instinct was panic. Should I change my date? Apologize for a conflict I didn't create? But as Helena continued listing reasons why I should rearrange my plans, something hardened inside me. I looked at the invitation design, at Raphael arranging coffee mugs in the sink, at the home that welcomed me unconditionally. "I will not rearrange my joy to accommodate your judgment," he said calmly. "What did you just say?" "The date remains, Aunt Helena." Anyone who wants to participate in any event should follow their heart. You've made yours very clear. I ended the call before she could answer. Raphael watched me carefully, waiting. Apparently, Sophia's wedding is on the same day as our celebration, I told him. Complete coincidence. Do you want to change our date? The question hung between us. With both ceremonies now scheduled for the same day, I faced a choice: postpone my celebration to avoid conflict or proceed with the day Raphael and I had planned. Was maintaining peace with people who excluded me worth disrupting my own happiness? No, I finally replied. Let's keep our date. Raphael nodded, understanding without needing explanation. This was the difference between chosen family and blood ties. One demands performance, the other offers acceptance. Later that afternoon, my phone vibrated with a message from Laura. I saw your final invitation design. Beautiful. Consider photography services my gift to you both. I smiled, typing my thanks. Within minutes, a group chat formed with friends coordinating travel plans, turning our get-together into a weekend celebration. Diego offered to handle the wine selection, while Beatriz wanted to arrange flowers from local markets. You focus on the creative stuff, Raphael said that night, showing spreadsheets tracking accommodations and transportation. I'll handle the logistics. As we worked side by side, he managing practical details, I adding personal touches, I realized we were creating something neither of my parents would understand. This wasn't about reaction, but about intention. Not about competition, but about completion. My phone began vibrating constantly with family messages, but friends created a protective buffer. When Helena sent a paragraph about selfish choices, Laura responded with photos of the beachfront location. When my mother texted asking how I could do it, Raphael handed me paint samples for table settings. A week before our celebration, an unexpected message arrived from my cousin Raquel, whom I hadn't spoken to in months. Grandma is asking questions about why you weren't invited to anything. Helena's story doesn't hold up anymore. I read it twice, unsure how to respond. The next day, another message arrived, this time from Uncle David. Something doesn't add up about this wedding drama. Sophia keeps changing her explanation. The family narrative, so carefully constructed, began to show cracks. Different relatives had received different versions of my exclusion, and the contradictions were becoming apparent. When my grandmother's name popped up on my phone that night, I answered immediately.
Luna?
Her voice sounded smaller than I remembered. I'd like to hear her side of this wedding thing. Before I could form a response, another call rang, my mother's. I let it go to voicemail, focusing on my grandmother's questions. Later, I heard my mother's message, her voice tense with false casualness. We need to talk about a deal. Can we meet tomorrow? It's urgent. I put my phone away, staring at the sunset, painting Raphael's garden in golden light. For once, the thought of facing my family didn't fill me with dread. Whatever came next, I was on solid ground. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday morning at 8:15, 3 days before my ceremony. Through the peephole, I saw my mother clutching her white knotted purse while Aunt Helena stood beside her, her designer bag hanging in a tight grip. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but the truth must be faced eventually.
Luna, darling.
My mother's voice held false cheer as she entered my apartment. We thought we should talk. Helena followed her, her gaze sweeping critically around my room where design samples for my ceremony with Raphael were carefully arranged. This has gone too far, she said, not bothering with pleasantries. I remained standing as they settled onto the couch. The power dynamics felt different now. In their presence, I no longer shrank. We'd like to propose a deal, my mother said, her hands fiddling with her wedding ring. You can attend Sophia's reception, just the evening portion. Her eyes met Helena's briefly. If you cancel your event. Think about how this feels for everyone, Helena added. 2 events on the same day divide the family, force people to choose sides. My mother leaned forward, her voice lowering. Your grandmother is very stressed about this situation. At her age, this kind of family conflict isn't good for the heart. The manipulation was so transparent it almost made me laugh. Instead, I walked to my drawing table and returned with a leather portfolio. I'd like to show you something, I said, opening it to reveal watercolor sketches of an intimate beachside ceremony. This is what Raphael and I have planned. 18 guests, no formal invitations, just people who genuinely care about us. I turn the pages slowly, revealing handwritten menus, personalized table settings, and floral arrangements in shades of amber and sage. The date was set weeks before I even learned about Sophia's wedding, I explained, my voice firm. We didn't choose it to compete. We chose it because the villa has perfect sunset lighting for photography. My mother's brow furrowed in confusion. But why didn't you tell us? I pulled out another folder containing elegantly designed invitation mock-ups. Invitations I never sent. I respected your decision to exclude me. I didn't think you wanted to know. She looked genuinely stunned. Luna, we never meant to. I'm not asking anyone to choose. I gently interrupted. You made your choice months ago. This celebration isn't about Sophia. I've closed the portfolio. Nor is it about you. Helena stood abruptly, walking over to my wall where client projects hung next to ceremony plans. This doesn't change anything, she insisted. Sophia's wedding is the real event. Playing house doesn't change that. I felt something break inside me, not in anger, but in clarity. I'm not playing games, Aunt Helena. I'm living authentically while you're performing. I passed a brochure across the coffee table. This is my wedding portfolio. 3 national brands hired me based on these designs. While you were telling everyone about my jealousy issues, I was building a business that pays for this apartment. My mother sank deeper into the couch, her eyes lingering on a photo of Raphael and me in his villa. For the first time, she seemed to see beyond her sister's narrative. Were we really that cruel? She asked quietly. Helena snorted, clutching her purse. This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand here while she twists everything. She marched to the door, but paused with her hand on the doorknob. Sophia's wedding costs 85,000 reis. It's at the Imperial Hotel. There will be 200 guests. This is what a royal celebration looks like. She smiled, not unkindly. That looks lovely on Sophia. I hope she feels truly seen there. After Helena slammed the door, my mother remained seated, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. You taught me I wasn't worth including, I told her, my voice soft but firm. I taught myself I was worth celebrating. She opened her mouth to reply, but her phone vibrated with a message. She read it, her face paling slightly. What is it? I asked. Your cousin Deborah is asking if she can come to your ceremony instead of Sophia's. She looks up, perplexed. How does she know this? I shrugged. People talk. Just like they talked about excluding me. After my mother left, promising to think about everything, I watered my balcony garden, wondering which ceremony, if any, she would attend. My phone rang just as the sun slipped behind the downtown buildings. Luna? Raphael's voice sounded excited. You won't believe this. That wedding blog I mentioned, Modern Celebrations, they want to feature our ceremony. They love the idea of an intimate designer wedding focused on authenticity over extravagance. I leaned against the railing, watching a black-feathered bird land nearby, the same vibrant colors as one I'd seen the day I discovered the bridal shower photos. The story was changing in ways I'd never anticipated. I whispered, more to myself than to Raphael. For the first time since it all began, I felt neither sad nor angry, just free. 7 weeks after our ceremony, I nearly dropped my phone when Raphael showed me the stats. 75,000 likes on our wedding photo. The number seemed impossible, but there it was on the screen, along with hundreds of comments praising our authentic celebration of love. Look at this one, Raphael said, pointing to a comment from a popular design blogger. Luna's attention to meaningful details rather than empty extravagance redefines what a modern ceremony can be. I laughed softly, remembering all the family gatherings where I'd sat silently while relatives adored Sophia's conventional choices. Now strangers were celebrating my vision while my family's grand hotel wedding had faded into the background of social media memories. My design calendar was now swelled with appointments. 3 major brands had reached out since the wedding highlight went viral, tripling my client base overnight. Yesterday, An editor from Revista Casamentos do Sul emailed about featuring our ceremony, specifically requesting an interview about my design work. The irony? I told Raphael as we sat on our porch, watching the sunset paint the Portland skyline. They shut me out to keep me from stealing the spotlight.
And now,
The doorbell interrupted my thoughts. A delivery man brought a cream-colored envelope with Aunt Helena's distinctive handwriting. Inside, a brief letter demanding that I decline the magazine's feature, out of respect for Sophia's privacy during this difficult time. My hands should have been shaking. 7 weeks ago, they would have been. Instead, a calm clarity washed over me as I placed the letter back in its envelope. "What are you going to do?" Raphael asked, his voice gentle. I walked to my desk and pulled out a copy of the magazine that featured my design portfolio last month. I slipped it into a mailing envelope with a note I wrote without hesitation. "I'm not competing with Sophia. I'm completing my own story." No anxiety flooded my system as I sealed the envelope. No desperate need for approval tightened my chest. The transformation still amazed me, how completely I'd stopped seeking validation from people determined to deny it. 2 days later, Laura called with news that sent me spinning around our apartment. "The exhibition is confirmed," she announced. 30 designers, and you're the main attraction. My friends had organized a design exhibition at a restored estate near Sao Paulo, showcasing artists who reimagined traditional approaches. The event emphasized authentic connection over manufactured perfection, substance over performance. At the opening reception, Laura raised her glass to write us into stories worthy of our lives. She toasted, and the room erupted in applause. I stood among people who celebrated rather than diminished my view, and the contrast with family gatherings could not have been more stark. The following month, Raphael and I moved into a modest apartment overlooking downtown. The space was smaller than my old place, but filled with light and possibilities. My calendar now included lectures on authentic design alongside meetings with clients who valued substance over appearance. I was organizing prints for my office wall when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Aunt Helena was there with Sophia slightly behind her, uncomfortable. "We need to talk," Helena said, pushing past me into the apartment. "This has gone on long enough." Sophia looked uncomfortable as Helena continued. "Was all of this necessary? The magazine? The exhibition? Were you so determined to prove your point?" I studied their faces. Helena felt threatened and defensive, but in Sophia I saw something different, perhaps curiosity or even regret. I felt a surprising surge of compassion. "Do you think this is about you?" I asked calmly. "It's the first time I've celebrated without worrying about how you'd twist it. That's all." They left soon after, Helena stiff-backed and silent, Sophia with a look back that I couldn't fully interpret. As I watched them leave the exhibit, I wondered if healing family wounds requires both sides to acknowledge the injury, or if sometimes the healthiest path is simply to tend your own garden and let others make their own choices. Sometimes the greatest freedom comes not from being accepted by those who rejected you, but from finally accepting that you never needed their approval to flourish. If this story touched you in any way, if you've ever felt excluded, diminished, or erased by your own family, please like this post so more people can find it. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to choose your own happiness. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about rebuilding, authenticity, and the courage to write your own ending. Because your story deserves to be told, even if some prefer you remain silent.